Hi, I'm James, and today we're going to look at Zvezda's model of the US light tank M3A1, the Stuart, also known as the Honey in British service. If you are using it for British, it's a Stuart 3 or a 4 if it was the diesel engine. Used by the Americans, also used by the British and Commonwealth forces. The Soviets were supplied them, and Tito in Yugoslavia was actually supplied a number by the British, where there were some very interesting modifications after the war, but that's a bit outside the scope of this. Believe it or not, the tank is actually still in use by Paraguay. They actually still have some in service. Now, it's not a particularly big model kit, and quite simple with only 10 parts. So what we're going to do is have a look at this, and then we're going to do a full build on this one. So I've cleaned out all the parts and taken them off the sprue with the cutters, laid them out. You can see it's not going to be a complex kit. So there is a technique I found to build these, because I've built a number of them for the game. What I've started off with is assembling the full hull. I find that works well. Now, it is a snap together fit, so you don't have to worry about gluing. I'm using mine as a wargaming model. I want it to be fairly robust, so I tend to glue it. So once we've got the main part of the hull together, we'll add the rear plate. That goes in quite nicely. Check it's all fitting nicely, yep. And then what we're going to do is add the upper part of the hull. I like the fact that they've actually cast the machine gun onto it. It's much bigger improvement on the separate ones that you're then trying to fit in. So that's our main body assembled. I'm going to put that to one side now and move on to the turret. Now, the turret's nicely split in half. That little bit that looks like a bit of sprue to cut off is actually the coaxial machine gun, so just be careful you don't take that off. When you're putting the main gun in, if you make sure you have it so that the solid peg goes downwards and the hollow one goes upwards, that way it'll be much easier to make them up, sorry, the turret to the hull, once we try and put that together. So push the other turret side on. That's a simple fit. And then we've got the turret roof to put on. Again, this is not exactly the hardest of kits. Again, check everything fits nicely. You may need to do a little bit of filling on some of these. Now, it's at this point I then put the tracks on. What I've found is that when I was putting the tracks on first, when I was then pushing parts on when there wasn't a good fit, particularly between the upper and lower hull, what I sometimes did was snap the rear pin on this, so it was only held on by the front pin. So it's definitely better to assemble it with these being the last things that you put on. And then once we've done that, attach the turret, and we've got the flag, which I don't use. It's used in their own game, and when I looked into it, because I did wonder what they were used for, they are just painted in a colour so you know which side the unit's on. So let's have a look at a couple on the tabletop. They fit in quite nicely. You'll notice mine are painted up as British 4th Armoured Brigade. Quite usefully, the 4th Armoured Brigade was using the A1 version rather than the later M5. So quite convenient from my perspective. It's got the older Sherman 2s, and you can see the Battlefront Sherman. They do fit nicely for scale.
So wonderful to see these armoured vehicles and tanks being driven around the arena here and feeling the way again.
Overall then, really quick, simple model to build. Wide usage, so you can use it with a lot of different forces. If I was using it with American, though, I probably would take the time to go to my bits box and put a 30 caliber on it, because that was very common for the Americans. You can also modify it. I mentioned the Yugoslavian ones, which one of them even mounted a packed 40 on top, which must have been interesting, for a better description. But there's also a modification that you may want to consider doing, which the British in particular using them for the reconnaissance role. Remove the turret and just put a pintle mount machine gun on as a light recce vehicle. But well worth buying, and I've got no doubt that I'll probably add more to my forces at some point.